welcome to episode 81 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for a virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So we are sort of piggybacking off of our Would You Rather last week, which was, would you rather an enemies to lovers trope or a friends to lovers trope in your books? So this week we're going to talk about, would you rather live an enemies to lovers romance or live a friends to lovers romance? So,
Sometimes.
What would you rather?
So, I kind of feel like this one is like, you see those memes all the time on Instagram, like, what's the most unrealistic thing about fantasy? And it's like, men. So, it's like one of those situations where it's like, obviously last week I chose enemies to lovers, but this week I'm 100% choosing. I'd rather live a friends to lovers. Like, I'm not, like, a super holder of grudges, but I can hold a grudge, and I think it would have to be a miscommunication trope for, like, a grudge to become an enemy situation, I guess. And if that were, for me to be able to forgive them, I mean, it would have to be something like, something came out that I didn't know, and, like, that just, I can't live a miscommunication trope. Like, we know how much I hate it in books. I can't live it. So, I'd have to pick friends to lovers. And, like, my partner now, we were friends. We've known each other since I was 17, so.
Yeah.
Have to go with friends to lovers. What about you?
Yeah. So, I think I would say the same thing. So, same sort of deal. Like, my husband and I have actually gone to school together since junior high.
Mm.
He didn't know I existed in junior high.
Which is like, why would you tell me that?
Barely knew I existed in high school.
Yeah.
But we became sort of friends and hung out in university, and then that sort of led to where we are now, which is like 10 years married, and I think it's 16, maybe 17 years together. So yeah, I think friends to lovers is the only way to go. Like, and you say you're okay at holding grudges. I am amazing at holding grudges.
Yeah.
Like, I still hold a grudge against a girl who didn't come to my 21st birthday hangout.
Wow.
Another friend came in the middle of getting a divorce. She was so upset. She still came and brought me alcohol.
Was she your age?
Yes. Yeah. Anyway.
Fine.
Besides the point.
Sorry, just... Yeah.
Anyway,
wow.
So if she can come, the other girl could have come, even though she was like, oh, I don't really have money. And it's like, we're hanging out at my house.
Yeah, Was I around you then?
You might have been around. You might
But-
have been around.
Yeah.
You were definitely around. I don't know if you would have come to that event because you didn't really know my friends then.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious because we met, I guess, when I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, we weren't, like, super best friends at the beginning anyway, so.
No.
But, yeah. Can't remember. But I can't remember a lot of things. Just curious.
Yeah. Anyway. So, like, I am the grudge-holding queen of the universe.
Fair.
Like, I might forgive someone for something, but I'll never forget.
So, yeah, to have, like, a incredibly personal relationship with somebody and feel like that, it just seems impossible. You know what I mean?
And like, I sort of agree with you. Like, the only thing I could think of to go around it would be if the slight was not from that person directly or to me directly. Like, if our parents hate each other, like a Romeo and Juliet thing, where, like...
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
You're
our parents hate each other, but, like, we didn't actually have anything against each other.
You're sworn enemies, but you're not actually enemies.
Yeah,
you don't even know each other.
Yeah, something like that I could totally do, I think.
Yeah.
But, like, if the person was actually an asshole... Now, and I will actually predicate this with saying, like, if maybe they were an asshole to me in elementary school, I could probably get over that.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it sort of depends on why
the
we're
level
enemies.
of slight.
Yeah.
But the thing about enemy, to me, like, I can't really think of anyone in my life that I would classify as an enemy. Like, an actual, like, you know? So I can't imagine how bad somebody would have to be to actually be an enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, we don't have enemies. But if we did, I also feel like it wouldn't be, like, when a lot of us, when we read the enemies to lover stuff, it's, like, really bad. Like, you killed my sister, but I love you. Or, like, something like that.
Yeah, they're not great. A lot of these situations are very bad.
Or, like, you've kidnapped me and you are in the mafia. I hate you.
But you're also very attractive.
Yeah. I would like to think that if my life were that, like, chaotic, I don't know. I don't think I'd be able to function.
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, you probably wouldn't be having, like, healthy relationships anyway, because you wouldn't even be able to deal, so...
Yeah.
Maybe we'd change our tunes if we lived in such circumstances.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, so yeah, I feel like both of us have actually lived the friends to lovers trope, so we're just both saying friends to lovers.
It's what we gotta choose.
It's what we gotta do.
Because we're happy now. Ugh,
yeah.
Gross.
So boring.
God, how dare we?
Okay, so just a heads up. This is not a spoiler-free zone, and things could get saucy. So it is week 3. We are reading chapters 27 to 38 today. So last week, we had Celaena and Rowan sort of open themselves up to each other a little bit, you know, after the attack from the skinwalkers. But it doesn't sort of change how he treats her. He's still a dick. Dorian finds out that Chaol and Aedion are working together. And Aedion essentially just wants Aelin back in his life.
Yeah.
And Manon has chosen her wyvern, but she did not choose the one you think she would choose, the big, strong, broody dude. She picked the warrior, the survivor, and named him Abraxos. So, we are moving into week 3. So we start with Manon's point of view. So she is actually watching as the Yellowlegs coven cross the Ferrying Gap. So the Ferrying Gap is like, I guess I can only think of it as almost like a big ravine. Like there's like 2 cliffs on either side, sort of keeping them sheltered where they are.
Yeah. And
in order for them to fly and to attack, then they're going to have to cross the gap, but it is narrow and precarious and tricky to cross because of like just the wind gusts and all that sort of thing. So they have to practice crossing it so that they can like, it's like I don't know, I almost feel like it's like a rite of passage, like crossing the gap.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like that.
So she's watching the Yellowlegs do it. Iskra wanted Titus, but again, Titus was killed by Manon's wyvern, Abraxos. So Iskra has picked a different male, a different bull, named Fendir.
Do you think every other person's wyvern was already named? Because Titus had a name, and was it only because Abraxos was like a bait beast that he wasn't named? Sorry, this is a tangent and doesn't matter at all. But
no, but I was actually just thinking, like literally just thinking this in my head.
Yeah,
and I that sounds about right, because you're right. Titus did have, but the rest of them they didn't name as they were.
Yeah, I wonder if it was only him that had a name because he was like the big bad bull.
Yeah,
the big bad bull. Yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, it could be. So Fendir is who she has picked. Apparently he was smaller than Titus, but twice as mean.
How?
Like, could you even get meaner than Titus?
Titus was so mean.
But Titus was also, like, smart.
Yes.
So I feel like maybe Fendir isn't.
Yeah. And it seems like nobody else is looking at their intelligence at this point. Like, I feel like Iskra hasn't noticed that there is intelligence at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the rest of the 13 are busy teaching the other covens hand-to-hand combat. So I guess the 13 are so good they get to lead the lessons in combat. And she tells Asterin, her second, to keep the 13 busy, that she's gonna go train. And Asterin essentially tells her that apparently her grandmother told Asterin that she would gut her if she let Manon out of her sight again. Because, if you remember, Asterin was actually beaten, like whipped, for letting Manon fall into the pit, even though she was pushed by Iskra.
Yeah.
So Asterin is not supposed to let Manon out of her sight. And Manon asks her, if, like, she said to Asterin, are you my grandmother's spy, or are you my second? So, like, are you gonna do what I tell you to, or are you gonna do what my grandmother tells you to?
And her grandmother isn't just, like, her grandmother. It's the matron of their...
Yeah.
Race of iron teeth.
Yes.
Like, it's not... This is, like, a lot to ask somebody.
Mm-hmm. But she does say, her response is, I serve you. So, essentially saying, fuck your grandmother, what do you want?
Yeah. It's like, the friendship.
Yeah.
The 13.
I know. So she also wants Asterin in the sky ASAP to sort of watch over the Yellowlegs and see how they fly. And Asterin said she's already got it under control. So I don't know if she's got, like, people assigned to do that, to spy, or if she sort of is saying, like, oh yeah, for sure I'll do that. So Manon is happy with that. She goes to Abraxos's pen, and apparently he's being difficult. The overseer of all the wyverns and the handlers are trying to get a saddle on him, but he won't, like, come away from the wall. And, like, they're trying with whips and everything, and all it does is make Abraxos lunge for them.
Imagine somebody not liking to be whipped.
Right? So, like, he hates them and he hates the whip, obviously. But he's also used to it. Like, I think that Manon said that, like, he's staying, because she chose him, he's staying in an actual pen now. Like, before, he was cramped up with the other bait beasts, like, in the dungeon, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so he's now got, like, a pen all to himself. He's got space. He's got enough food. Like, he's being treated well-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And he's obviously not used to it yet.
Yeah.
So Manon heads to Abraxos in his pen, and like everyone's sort of like, oh, you should stay back, like he's in a moment or whatever. And the overseer even tries to get her to stay away, and so tries to reach for her. So she swipes at him with her iron nails.
Good.
Obviously, yes. And it's sort of like her saying, dude, back the fuck up.
Yeah.
Right? So then, to be even more intimidating and terrifying, she licks the blood off of her nails. And she says it, like, tastes rotten. Like, almost like curdled. Which is disgusting. And she also said it looked too dark for human blood. So, whatever this overseer guy is, not quite human. So she goes over to Abraxos and she speaks to him like he can understand her, because obviously she thinks he can. And then he lets her touch him, and she thinks that his hide is soft and warm and supple. But also she says, like, he's just gray. Sort of like she's like the silver-haired witch. And I just think it's really cool that she chose a wyvern that's sort of also similar looking.
Mm-hmm. And may get even more similar looking by the end of this week.
Mm-hmm. So she says that, like, there are a ton of scars on him, and his teeth are yellow, cracked, and rotting. Like, he hasn't been, he hasn't
obviously,
been
nobody's been brushing his teeth. Like, Titus, they're probably there, like, not actually, obviously, but it's kind of funny to think about.
Yeah. So, she thought that he had been born differently, and that he was, like, a warrior, a survivor. And that made him a thinker. And she thinks that he could understand her and possibly teach the other mounts to understand the 13.
Mm-hmm.
So she thinks he's really valuable. So she essentially tells him, Abraxos, that she is going to check the saddle for fit, and he is going to let her. As well as let her fit his tail for iron spikes, because they cut off his poisonous ones, and replace his teeth with iron teeth.
Which is cute. They're going to be matching.
Cute. Yeah, and I love that she thought about this. Like,
yeah.
So she then says, like, that's the only way you'll get out of this prison. So.
Yeah.
So he listened. Apparently he let everything happen. It took 5 days, and Manon stayed with him the whole time.
And she doesn't have feelings.
Right? Like, she's emotionless and cold and heartless. Anyway, after the 5 days, she meets with Sorrel, who is her third. Sorrel is in charge of training all the covens. So she explains Sorrel as the rock. So, like, she is ice, Asterin is fire, Sorrel is the rock that, like, grounds them both. Her grandmother actually thinks Sorrel would make a better second, but Manon thinks that Asterin's fire is important and balances her better than the rock would. But the stone / Sorrel manages to balance both of them.
Yeah. So, like, they all need each other.
Yeah, I know. Vesta is another member of the 13, so we're sort of getting, like, a few names here. Yeah. So Vesta is the promiscuous one. She keeps going out at night and having sex and biting the men. But, like, she's not killing them. They like it.
Yeah. Do you remember first reading this book? I don't know if you were like me, but all I cared about was Celaena. And I was like, I don't care about any of these people you're naming. But then this reread, I'm like, oh, Astrid and Sorrel and Vesta. Like, I'm like, oh, tell me all about them, please.
Yeah. There are also the twins that we've already heard about, Faline and Fallon. They are currently teaching knife throwing. There's Edda and Briar. They are the shadow spies. And then we have Lynn, who is a backup sentry and apparently, like, super vicious.
Why is she backup?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So they're meeting with so I guess Astrid, Sorrel, and Manon are meeting with the shadow spies tonight. And Manon's plan is to be airborne with Abraxos in the next week. Because she hasn't had a chance to ride him yet. And then meanwhile, there are other covens that are already, like, crossing the gap.
Mm-hmm.
But she sort of says, like, in her head, like, she foolishly claimed and promised that she would be airborne within a week. So, like, we sort of know that she's not.
She doesn't believe that she can be, but she's like, I've got to say something.
Yeah. Okay, so back to Celaena's POV. Woo!
Where we love to be.
Yeah. So Rowan, took Celaena on, like, a little adventure to a commune of healers. And apparently, like, the finest healers learned and worked there. And it's accessible to anybody who can get there. Like, as long as you wanted to go, there was no, like, tuition. There was nothing like that. If you could get there, you were trained. She remembers as a child wanting to come, but her mother wouldn't let her because it was too close to Maeve. And she was worried that Maeve would get her hands on her. So they just have a lovely time spent at the healer's tower. The next day, her and Rowan are going on an overnight trip.
Ooh. I wish.
I know. So he wants her to shift before they go, as they are running there, and apparently it's 20 miles. And it's just obviously easier and faster if she shifts.
Although, 20 miles is a half marathon. It's only about...
It's a half marathon? Not a
miles. Sorry, yes. Sorry, my brain is kilometers, obviously, because I am Canadian. Yes. What is a marathon again? 42.2 kilometers. Is it 26 miles? Maybe. But, like, a fast human can run a marathon in, like, 3 hours, maybe? But she's faster than humans. So I just feel like yes, it might take longer than he wants. But, like, I don't know, I'm looking up fastest marathon now. So the fastest, or some people can run a marathon in under 2 hours. Like, 2 hours doesn't seem insane.
No.
Amount of time to get somewhere.
No, I agree.
And she is part Fae, so you'd think she'd be faster than humans anyway. So she should be faster than the fastest man-human runner that we have in our world. So I'm just like, that doesn't seem like it would be that long.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I also think, a marathon is 26.2 miles. So it's even less than that. So it would take like an hour and a half.
That's not bad, actually.
For her to run 20 miles. That's my, like, fast math. But I don't think it would be that bad.
Maybe she doesn't have the stamina to do it.
You'd think she would, though, because, like, all she did back at the castle was run. Well, she also did other shit, too, yes.
Yeah, but did they run that long?
Maybe not. I think they did, like, 5 miles every day. So it's 4 times that.
Yeah.
Yeah. She might not. But I don't think, I don't know, maybe she is only as fast as a human woman in her human form, but you just think that she would be faster than what we have as humans in our world. I don't know.
Well, anyway. So there was the reason why I guess they're going is because another body was found in the same area. It was a demi-fae, so they're going to the nearby town to ask around. But Rowan needs Celaena because most mortals don't trust fae. So, like, if they're going to go and ask questions, she has to be the one to ask. So she struggles to shift. She can't really shift. But he taunts her, saying, like, someone has died and that's unacceptable. Like, you must be scared because you can't shift. And he then tells her, like, hone her anger and use it. And that, like, if she can't find the peace to change, then embrace and control the anger that's allowed her to shift a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, initially she's sort of like, shouldn't you not be telling me to use my anger? And he's just sort of like, listen, it's the only thing that's worked. Like, once you get a handle on it, you can start to do it without it. But, like, as of right now, that's the only way you're going to shift. So, might as well. So she said that, like, or thinks she was so angry all the time. Like, he doesn't actually have to goad her into anger. Like, she's always angry. So she just has to reach inward and commands herself to shift. And she does. And, like, I don't know, man. Like, granted, I love these books. It bothers me at, like, how, it was just a mental block. And, like, she learned just because, like, it was like she couldn't forever and ever and ever. And now all of a sudden she's like, I can, so I shall.
Yeah. But it's kind of like that. The whole thing is kind of like that. And it's a bit annoying that, like, he talks her through, like, all of it in a way. But, like, later on this week too, like, when he's talking about her magic in general, it's similar. And I'm like, she should be able to find it within herself and, like, figure some stuff out herself. And, like, she still does, because it's not like after this week she has a complete control on everything. She doesn't. But yeah, you would think that it would, I don't know, maybe it was time. Maybe she'd been trying so hard for so long that it was like, okay, it's gonna work now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess, like, I just get annoyed by, it just seems like, you know, somebody tries to do something and can't do it for so long. And then it's like, they get one, like, I say pep talk in the loosest of terms.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, all of a sudden, like, all of their mental, like, shields break apart, and, like, all of a sudden it's super easy and they can do it. Why couldn't they do it sooner? Mm. And I just, like, I don't know how to make something like that harder, but, like, I wish there was a way to make it so that it didn't seem like, oh, all I had to do was realize this and then I can do it.
Yeah.
Like, even if she realized it and struggled to shift but ended up shifting or something like that. Or, like, managed to hold it for a little bit and then the next day hold it for a little bit more and then the next day hold it for a little bit more. Or, like, something like that. You know what I mean? Make it a progression instead of, he's right. I can use my anger and then immediately shift and it's all fine. Now I can shift whenever I want, even though it's been weeks and I haven't been able to do it.
Yeah. And I almost feel like the pep talk that he gives her later about her powers is the actual reason that she can't shift on command. And, like, if he had been like, you're afraid of your power, but your power is trying to protect you because it knows you're afraid. So that is why you can't control it, because you're scared of yourself and then your
Yeah.
power's rising up to save you from that fear so it can't actually do anything. So like,
But like,
yeah.
I feel like learning something about yourself does not automatically solve all your problems.
No, 100%.
You know what
and
I
also,
mean? Like,
it's not realistic for her to just get angry every time she wants to turn into Faye either. Like, you can't just be like, and now I'm mad. Like,
yeah.
it's not a realistic solution.
No. And I don't know. I just like, I feel like, you know how you have like breakthroughs in therapy?
Yeah.
I just feel like they're trying to be like, this is your breakthrough in therapy. But like, just because you have a breakthrough in therapy doesn't mean you stop going to therapy. Like, you still gotta work through shit. So, she shifts after that little moment. Rowan, like, starts to tease her a little bit. So he's, like, pinching her, and then he moves very fast, and, like, she can't get him back, and he's pulling her hair, and she manages to, like, fake him out, and then she smacks his head, and he tells her, like, you better run, like, for doing that, like, you better run.
Mm-hmm.
So she does. And, like, it reminds me of the Twilight. Remember the Twilight scene when Bella is first a vampire? And they run through the woods? And she's like, oh my god, this is amazing. I can run forever.
Yeah.
So this is what they're doing. They're running the 20 miles to get to the town. And, like, she's, like, admiring how, like, she doesn't feel winded at all, and, like, she still can, like, see everything of the forest, and, like, she can still avoid all the roots and the trees, and, because she thought, oh, I'm gonna be running so fast, I'll definitely hit a tree, but, like, she can avoid it all easily still. So it totally, like, just brings me back to that.
Of course, yeah.
So Celaena thinks that Rowan is, like, staying with her on purpose, like, he doesn't get too far ahead of her. And she just wants to run. So, like, she says, like, she just boots it and goes faster and faster until she is, like, soaring. And Rowan is, like, playing with her. Like, he snaps at her and then retreats and then gets closer to her and then retreats. And it makes her feel, like, looser and freer. And she looks at him and he looks the same. Like, he must also love to run. And it looks like he's almost smiling. Like, he's almost having a good time.
Interesting.
Yes. And she also says that, like, she can feel the fire in her veins, like, her power snapping to escape. But it wasn't unbearable. It was, like, a gentle hum warming her blood. It wasn't, like, something that she had to try and keep down. But she loved the speed, and she loved the body, and she wonders why she's been afraid of it for so long. Why has she been afraid of it for so long?
In Ireland, she'd be dead. Like, there's a lot of trauma that we're not really working through, and I think maybe she needs to see a therapist.
Yes! See a therapist.
We're just gonna go back to therapy at every step.
Yeah. Because, of course, hand in hand, the very next thought that she has after, like, she's like, oh my god, I love this. Why was I afraid? But then she's like, this actually means nothing. Nehemia orchestrated her own death because I'm a coward. So, like, it's like, oh, I'm having so much fun. This is an amazing time. And then I hate myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two very different ends of the spectrum, which we can all sort of, like, I get.
Oh, 100%, yes.
Right? Rowan, I guess, packed, like, a backpack of stuff. So he gives her a shirt to change into, which I thought actually was very thoughtful that he, carried her shit for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So he changes because he's equally sweaty. And I'm just like, woo! And she saw scars, like, all along his back, and she knows that he was held and tortured for, like, 2 weeks, at least. So, makes sense he would have scars. But she does not want him to see her scars. So she changed behind a tree. They go to the nearby town, but, like, nobody wants to talk to them because, like, this is the part I don't really get. So, like, Celaena doesn't shift back to a human. Yeah. So, like, he brought her because she can look human and talk to people, but she doesn't choose to look human. She's a fae, and nobody will talk to either of them. So, there's something.
Yeah.
So I guess everybody, like, they would talk to people and they'd be like, nope, didn't see nothing, didn't hear nothing, everything's normal. So I guess Celaena, well, both of them sort of deduced that that must mean the murderer has to be somewhat intelligent because it's picking people that nobody is missing. And she's sort of like, does this happen everywhere you go? Like, people won't talk to you? And Rowan says that, like, a lot of the people near Doranel, I guess, or, like, on this continent, are scared because for a really long time, the Fae went into cities unchecked and, like, took whatever they wanted because nobody was policing them. Mm-hmm. So, I guess, you know, it was okay. Like, it was right for people to be scared.
Yeah.
But now it's better. Like, now Fae know they can't just do that, but obviously people are still scared.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's as if you said to a robber, hey, rob whatever you want, and then, like, next time, you cannot rob anywhere. Like, obviously the people are still going to be scared of the robber, even though he can't rob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he still has a gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he still has his weapon, because he is a weapon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still scary.
Do you like my analogy?
I did. Yeah.
Anyway, so Celaena has a genius idea to try and win over the people by spending money. Rowan's money.
I love.
I know. She's like, did you bring money?
Why she didn't change, because she knew. She knew.
Yeah. Did you bring money? Yes. Great, we're gonna need it. So, like, they buy a few things. Apparently Rowan doesn't like chocolate, which is, like...
He doesn't like pleasure in his life either.
A character flaw, if I've ever seen one.
Same with my brother-in-law. Doesn't like chocolate. Says he's allergic.
Weirdo. Sorry about it.
Not a fact. You are incorrect.
Yeah. Anyway, so they buy some chocolate, and she just, like, eats it as they go around the village. Like, she ain't saving that for nobody.
Amazing.
And, like, we learned in Throne of Glass that she does like fancy things, right? Like, she loves music, she loves pretty dresses, she loves nice food. Like, she does like all of that. So, this is not a hardship for her.
Yeah.
So she's got her chocolate, she goes and buys some books, they go buy a loaf of bread, they go buy some meat, and I guess people see them spending money and they're like, ooh, let's try and sell them things. So all of the vendors come out in full force because they're trying to earn some money. But, so it's better this time because they try and they go around and buy things from people. And at the same time as they're buying them, they are asking them questions about the murders. Mm-hmm. Getting answers. I mean, although I will say it doesn't really matter because no one knows anything anyway.
Yeah, they weren't lying before.
No.
They just weren't nice to them, I guess.
Yeah. So the only person that had anything somewhat valuable is the crab vendor, who said he found a few knives in his fishing net.
Is he a crab? Or
crabby.
Catch crabs.
Oh, he catches crabs. He's not a crab. Although it'd be really cute if he was like a little crab and he was like, hello, buy my things.
I would love it. As long as he's not like the crusty crab.
Yeah.
No mean crabs here.
Yeah. Anyway, so apparently, he found all these knives in his nets, but tossed them back because he was like, what am I going to do with all these knives? Celaena and Rowan just think maybe like a ship, like a merchant ship that had like knives on board lost some cargo.
Yeah.
Which
fair assumption.
It is a fair assumption. I'd like to know what kind of knives. Like, are we talking like a butter? Or are we talking like steak?
I was thinking weapons.
Yeah, or are we talking like little cool daggers?
Yeah, I was thinking daggers that are actual weapons. I wasn't thinking like butter knives.
But like, why wouldn't you keep the daggers and sell them?
I think he said that he, like, sent them back out to the gods or something. Like, they're religious people, I guess. I don't know. I think if I had a stall, I would 100% be like, I can sell these at my stall.
Yeah. Okay. So, for some reason, this triggers a flashback to Celaena's childhood. Or afterwards, anyway. I don't know. So she's like 8 years old. She's in her nightie and she's eavesdropping on her parents as they talk/argue. So I almost feel like these flashbacks go backwards.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
Right?
I haven't finished the book, but yeah.
It seems like they go backwards.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Celaena's mother, Evelyn, wants Celaena's father to start a rumor that it wasn't Celaena in the library. That if he doesn't, then she will be hunted for her power. Mm-hmm. And also to, like, not let her in the library anymore, or like to make it so that not make it, but the dad is named Ro, and I got confused. So the dad Ro tells the mom that the librarians want to ban her from the library, and he doesn't think that that's the answer. Mm-hmm. And she's 8 years old, and she has told her father that her best friends are characters in books. And we know that she loves books and reading. Her and Dorian had that in common. And, like, This is something she's carried over from her childhood. Mm-hmm. Evelyn thinks that Celaena has Aedion, and that should be enough. But Ro argues that she needs friends and she needs training. And that maybe it's a good idea to send her to the private school that Aedion is going to attend next year.
Aedion came back. We talked about her last week.
Yes, Aedion is back, although it's just her name mentioned. Yeah. Or maybe even to the magic school that exists. But Evelyn refuses, because the magic school is too close to the border with Aderlin. So as Celaena is, like, eavesdropping, Aedion comes up behind her and eavesdrops with her. The reason that this whole conversation is happening is because Celaena accidentally burned a few books with her power at the library. Mm-hmm. Aedion picks up her and says, like, ooh, maybe we should go back and burn the whole thing to the ground. Like, whatever you want to do, I will do. And, like, he is already acting as if they are, like, bound together.
Yeah. He's bound to protect her.
Yeah.
Like, not, because there's different.
Yeah. They're not bound to protect each other. He is bound to protect her.
Yes.
Anyway, so the parents find them because I don't think they're being, like...
Well, one would assume that the parents also have good hearing. Like, if Aelin got good hearing from her two parents, wouldn't one of her parents at least have good hearing as well?
Yeah. So, I guess they weren't particularly, like, hidden. Yeah. So, the parents find them and they send Aedion to bed before talking to Celaena. And she says that, like, she hate being different. And like your heart just cracks a little bit. And then her dad has to say, and I actually really appreciate this response from her dad. He says that even without the power she has, she will always be a Galathinius and therefore the future queen. Mm-hmm. So like she will always be different. Mm-hmm. And she just says she doesn't want to be queen.
Yeah.
And I feel bad.
Yeah. And she's only like 8, I think. Like, yeah, 8. So like everything happened shortly after this, really.
Yeah.
Like very shortly. And you kind of wonder if that is why, like if she grew up longer with her parents and like had a childhood and then grew up and like maybe she would have been fine with being queen, but she's almost kind of stuck in that mindset. And like she is still, as we said last week, her age has teen in it. Like she's still young. So like I just feel like if she had have lived that life a bit longer and developed out of the hating the idea of being queen thing, maybe she wouldn't be where she is now.
Yeah. That's true. Because that's her big thing. Like, she did not want to take on the responsibility of a kingdom. Mm. And now, the only reason she is where she is right now is because Nehemia can't do it for her own kingdom.
Yeah.
So, you know, Celaena is taking on that vow to help Nehemia's kingdom, not her own.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, she wakes up from, like, I guess her flashback was a dream or something. And Rowan asks her if she wants some breakfast. And if she does, right, it's very nice of him. But if she wants it, she has to start the fire.
So did she just sleep as a fae?
I guess.
It seems like something that you'd slip out of. I don't know. I don't know how anything works.
No, I agree with you. Like, you would think that you could slip back and forth, but like, I don't know. Isn't this is the form she spent all of her childhood in, isn't it?
Well, that's another thing that I don't really know. Like, did she spend, like, why was she in her human form then when magic disappeared?
But oh, yeah. Oh, I don't know.
I just don't understand.
I don't know. This
is
too much to think about.
It is, and there's not really enough information. There's too much information, but there's also not enough information.
Correct.
Make it make sense.
Yeah. Anyway, so she tries to start the fire, but she actually accidentally lights the whole clearing on fire.
Which is not surprising.
But Rowan says that at least she kept her shift this time, which is improvement.
Yeah.
Because she has been actually, like, shifting into a human so that her magic extinguishes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we're leaving them and we're going to Sorscha's POV now.
Interesting.
Is it?
Nothing is interesting other than Celaena. So, no.
Anyway, so she's thinking about Dorian. Obviously. It's like her whole MO. Apparently they have sort of concocted this tonic that contains iron in order to repress his magic because he's sort of been accidentally letting it out. And they don't want people to find out. So by taking this tonic with iron in it, it's repressing his power, which is a genius idea.
It is. It's very smart. Yeah.
So she delivers the dose to him, and he tries to flirt with her. He thanks her for helping him, and she sort of knows that he's a ladies' man, and, like, it's really foolish for anything to develop between them. So she tries to leave, and by tries, she walks out of his room and just stands outside of his door, and, like, she leans against the wall next to his room and realizes that, like, she has, like, a moment of clarity that she doesn't want her life she doesn't want to live her life unnoticed by him. And that even though he's a ladies' man and even though it's dangerous to get involved, like, she has to know what it's like to be his, even for a little while. It's not something I would do, but hey, I'm not Sorscha.
Each their own.
And I don't have my shot at a prince. Maybe if I did, I would feel differently.
I know, but she doesn't, you know.
I know, she's not choosing him for that reason.
No.
Anyway, so he comes out of the room, looks around, and sees that she's still there.
Sorry.
What?
With what we find out later.
Yes.
Do you think that she's like, I can't give up my shot at a prince to, like, gather intel? Because if she's around him at night and he may say things, like, she was already kind of digging about Celaena.
Yeah.
Could be, like, if he goes to meetings and she meets him after.
That's true.
It could be, I'm going to give her a bit more of the benefit.
Yeah.
I'm going to give her a bit more of the benefit.
Yeah. Anyway, so he comes out, sees her just still standing there. And she wastes no time. She just grabs him and starts making out with him.
Hey.
Yep. No consent here, people.
Yeah. Fuck.
Who needs it?
Me. I need it.
Well, I'm assuming he was willing because they just kissed for a while, right?
That's good.
Yeah. I'm assuming if he didn't want to, he would have pulled back.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave them to kiss for a while. And then we move to Chaol's point of view. So he is meeting with Ren and Murtagh and Aedion. So he's waiting, like, they're sort of like, they have these little places to meet out in the city. And he's waiting with Aedion, and he's impatient. Because he needs to do as much as he can to see to Dorian's safety before he leaves for Aniel. And he's leaving in a few weeks.
Yeah. Or he's supposed to be.
Yeah. And Aedion is sort of like, if you don't want to go, why are you, like, you seems like you don't want to leave, so why are you leaving? And he actually tells Aedion that doing this is the only way to send, it was his only way of sending Celaena to Wendlin. I guess they have a little chat about, like, fathers, and Chaol's like, my father's a piece of shit. And Aedion's like, I don't even know who mine is.
Nay.
Yeah.
That'll never come up again in this story.
Never. And he said even on her mother's deathbed, she wouldn't say.
Nay. What does that mean about his father?
I don't know. So
only good things, I assume.
So then all of a sudden Ren shows up. He's out of breath, but he's injured. So apparently they were followed, and he himself was ambushed by 8 men.
Nay.
Yeah, there's a lot of men.
Sorry. I don't know why. Just happened.
Anyway, so he managed to kill 2 of them, and then he ran, but they're still chasing him. So Chaol and Ren hide behind barrels, and the 6 find Aedion alone, and he just kills them all.
Like you do?
Yeah, like I can totally take out 6 adult men. I don't know about you, but I totally can.
For sure.
So they check out who these guys are, and they are wearing clothing that bear the royal sigil. Like the royal crest. But Chaol's like, I don't know any of these people. And, like, Chaol's supposed to be the one to hire them all, so, like...
It's interesting.
He should know them all.
Yeah.
So they hear more men prowling around, and they need to go somewhere to hide. Ren sort of is like, oh, I know just where we can go. So they go to an opium den, and the madam who runs it, knows Ren and leads them to, like, this curtained off little area. She goes and gets Ren a new tunic and comes back. So the men looking for Ren are apparently next door, and they're making the rounds trying to look for them.
Interesting that they, like, followed them.
Yeah, I don't understand. And, like, it's not even the 8 that jumped him, because they're all dead.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know how they found out about him, but...
Or maybe there's just infinite soldiers that Chaol doesn't know.
Maybe.
How shitty is he at his job?
Yeah. I mean, it
seems interesting.
He's real bad.
Yeah, it's a bit interesting.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
So they wrap Ren... Oh my god, this is a hard word. They wrap Ren's wounds. And the madam gives, like, each of them a pipe and puts, like, a little bit of rouge under their eyes and, like, powder all over them, essentially, and tells them to, like, act like you're on drugs. So the men come in, and the madam is like, "Oh, a table for you gentlemen. Like, what can I get for you?" And is trying to, like, get them to partake, but they don't. They check each table and move on. They do check Chaol and Ren's and Aedion's table, but, like, they're all disguised decently enough that they get, like, they aren't recognized.
Mm-hmm.
But,
which, like, you'd think that if the king has other men, they should have Chaol's face on file in their brains. Yeah. If he has secret men, they should know who the captain of the guard is. Even if he's stoned. And if you're stoned and the captain of the guard, you should still be like, who are these people? The logic.
Yeah.
Falls apart for me.
Yeah. Anyway, so Chaol's, like, super stressed after this event because he's like, who are all these people? I don't know them.
And so you killed a bunch of the king's men. Were they my friends?
But, like, he's like, I should know these people, and I don't know these people. So, like, he's stressed out. So, after the men leave, Murta has great timing and meets them there, managing to avoid any sort of skirmish. And the madam brings them into her office, and she is actually, like, not a healer, but she can do some stitches. So she stitches up Ren's wound. But it's a bad enough wound that he's going to be laid up for a while. But they're like, we have nowhere for him to go. Like, essentially, Ren and Murta have been living homeless this entire time, right? Like, they've been just hopping from warehouse to warehouse and sleeping there. So, they don't really have anywhere to go for him to heal.
Yeah.
Murta tells Chaol the theory that he's developed about the day the magic died. He said that he felt waves that formed a triangle across the continent, from Rifthold to the frozen wastes, from the frozen waste to the deserted peninsula, and then from the deserted peninsula back to Rifthold to create a triangle. They sort of think that it's a spell, but they don't know how to undo it. So the goal is to figure out how to undo it. And I guess Chaol is like, this is real progress. So he offers them the use of Celaena's really snazzy apartment in the slums to do their work.
And for Ren to heal, I guess.
Well, and for Ren to heal, yeah. So, moving on now to the second most interesting story. Manon!
Which, I still thought that these people that piss me off, although I love Aedion, I thought that they were more interesting than Manon the first time I read it, which is a fault of me. And Manon is, like, the only point of view that passes the Bechdel test. Because there's only one woman in each other point of view. There's Sorscha, and there's Celaena. Even everyone that works in the kitchen is male.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think she talks to another woman at all. I guess her and Maeve had a conversation that wasn't about a man. Although, is it about the King of Ardelden?
And, I mean, it doesn't matter because everybody was always there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
Interesting.
Ugh.
I only thought about it because we went to Sorscha's point of view, and I was like, why does she annoy me so much? And then I'm like, wait, does she pass the Bechdel test? And, like, she doesn't.
No.
Because there's no other... Oh, she got in trouble last week, didn't she? That was a conversation, I guess, although it was about the prince.
No, but then her supervisor warned her not to get close to the prince.
She was basically like, it doesn't matter if you're sleeping with him. He's a piece of shit, but he's the prince.
Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah.
Sorry.
No. I love it. So, Manon is trying to feed Abraxos. They're, like, in his pen, I guess. So she he just refuses to eat and is causing her frustration. So they've been stretching his legs in the mountains over the past few days. Like, again, he hasn't had a chance to have hardly any exercise, so he can't really take a running start and jump off the ferrying gap and flap his wings if he can't do the running start. So they've been, like, walking up the cliff and, like, hanging out on the cliff top. And he likes to smell the flowers. Oh, the poor little baby boy.
He's the best part of these books.
Yeah.
Not really, but kind of.
So Manon is obviously, like, horrified that he likes flowers. She's like, oh my god, you're gentle. I hate it.
But he's obviously not gentle, which is like, oh, you can have duality and be vicious and protective and gentle.
Yeah. So again, he pushes the meat away, and Manon goes to eat it herself, but then she smells it and says it smells off. Sort of the same way the men smell off. Like rotten. And the sheep that they're using to feed the wyverns were actually raised under the mountain where the men are all at. So it makes sense for them to sort of be infected with whatever it is the men are infected with.
Yeah.
So I guess because of this, she's gonna order the 13 not to touch the men until she figures out what's going on and why they smell weird. And also for the wyverns, like, she doesn't want the wyverns eating the food from under the mountain until... I say under the mountain.
Under the mountain?
It's the wrong book.
Yeah.
In the mountain.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that nobody has noticed it until Abraxos. It's like, what can he tell that other wyverns and witches and whatever can't?
Yeah. Yeah. So she essentially had to scale a cliff and grab a goat to feed him. Like, she fed him, like, she captured him a goat and just fed him
Captured.
She did. Oh, God.
Yeah. we catch a moose and then we eat it. We're just gonna go capture.
Okay, fine.
Hunted.
Yes. So she just, like, grabs a goat and feeds it to him whole.
Yeah.
And he eats it. And he loves it. But it has meant that she is now covered in blood and poop from the goat.
Yep.
And
unfortunate.
Yes, and what's worse is she has to go to a meeting with her grandmother covered in that poop and blood. So after she feeds Abraxos out on the field, They go back under the mountain, but he doesn't want to. He's, like, thrashing the whole time and, like, doesn't want the handlers to touch him. And Manon thinks, like, she doesn't feel pity for him because that's not what she does. But she does think about it. Like, it stays in her head that he didn't want to go back.
So she feels pity?
Yes!
And guilt?
And empathy?
And she just doesn't know how to name it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the grandmother obviously is disappointed because the Yellowlegs have been flying as a coven for 3 days. And, Manon and her 13 haven't even been airborne together yet. So essentially, the grandmother gives an ultimatum: be airborne tomorrow or don't come back. Yikes.
She loves her ultimatums. Like,
She
this is
does love his ultimatums.
a theme. I'm going to call it a theme.
Yeah. So, Manon and Abraxos climb the next day for about half a day up the mountain to practice. So, he obviously doesn't want to. But she yells at him and tells him that he has to. Like, and again, they're having a conversation. One-sided conversation, but she fully thinks he can understand her.
Yeah.
So, she takes a running jump and leaps onto the saddle that's on him, and he freaks the fuck out. Obviously, it's weird having someone on your back. And he's like...
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, like, especially if you don't expect it. Can you imagine just, like, walking down the hallway and then somebody going, yeah! And, like, grabbing onto you and, like, spidering you?
I cannot. I would faceplant.
So that's what I think of.
Yeah.
So, obviously, he's, like, bucking and flinging and bellowing, and, like, he's so panicked and enraged that they just fall off the cliff. And, I mean, like, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, it's not great, but, like, what else are you supposed to do?
Yeah. So they're, like, obviously tumbling over and over, and, like, Manon is yelling at him to, like, open your wings! Open your wings! Open your wings! Because he's just, like, he's just a sad little panda and just falling.
So sad.
He doesn't realize he can fly. So he finally does, and the air lifts them, and he flies. And they fly into the clouds, and Abraxos apparently lets out the most joyful roar. And Manon didn't understand what it was like for him to live underground, chained and beaten, until she heard that noise. So, like, she finally understands how awful his life has been, and yet she has no feelings. I don't know.
Can't explain it.
So she does this, like, king of the world thing, and, like, is loving her life, because she hasn't flown in a really long time, too.
Yeah.
The next day, she takes the 13 in formation to the canyon run to try flying together. And she tells them that she wants them all training together every morning, not to tell anyone that they're training before breakfast, but also she is going to make arrangements for all of her wyverns to be housed together, because they need to behave as a unit, and they will keep doing it again and again until it's perfect. And I think there's a bit of a concern that the wyverns won't listen to Abraxos as, like, the leader.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why she wants them all housed together, to sort of get the alphaness fighting sorted. Get that out of the way. So then her and Abraxos leap off the canyon in a good way. He likes flying. And then we leave her. Just jumping off a cliff.
Fair.
And we go back to Celaena again. I didn't have a lot with Chaol and Dorian and Aedion.
It still annoyed you? I understand. I literally read these books and I was like, why do I have to read about any of these other people? Until I got, so Empire of Storms has a huge cliffhanger, and then Tower of Dawn's the next book, and I forced myself through that because Kingdom of Ash was not out at the time, so it didn't matter. And Tower of Dawn wasn't out when I finished Empire of Storms. So I forced myself through that because it was at least something.
Yes.
And then Kingdom of Ash came out, and I was like, oh, maybe I like Manon and everyone in her story.
Yeah.
But I, like, forced my way through the entire book, everyone else's point of view, just to get to Celaena. And then I was like, now at least I somewhat enjoy Manon's point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I wasn't crazy about any of their points of views at first.
Yeah, no.
I've grown to enjoy them, but I'm still not crazy about the dudes during this section.
No. I-ish like Aedion, because I kind of like him as a character in the next book. Only because of Endgame.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree.
So, yeah.
Okay, so moving to Celaena's POV. So, they haven't heard of any new bodies for a week. So, Celaena and Rowan go to the ruins to train. She doesn't have any more problems shifting, but her new task that Rowan sets her is to light a candle without lighting everything else on fire. And she's really struggling with the control aspect. Yeah. But she says that, like, she really likes listening to Emery's stories at night. And one night, she actually asked him a story for one about Queen Maeve. So he, obviously, we're going to get an origin story here. He tells the story of the very beginning, when Fae were ruled by the three queens, Maeve, Mora, and Mab. And the tale, or the legend goes, that Mora and Mab actually gave up their immortality for love. And when Celaena asked if Maeve had ever mated, or, loved, the answer was no, but she had come close. Right, a warrior had stolen her heart with his clever mind and his pure soul, but he died in a war eons ago. And he lost the ring that he was going to give her. And that's why she cherishes warriors above all else. So, the tale paints a picture of Maeve as being strong enough to conquer the world, but kind enough not to, which is nice. I feel like Celaena's a little bit miffed because she doesn't see Maeve in that way.
Yeah.
Right? She sees Maeve as maybe a little bit crueler, a little bit more, absent. But these stories are painting Maeve in a different light. Mm-hmm. Celaena then sees this giant cat coming towards the keep through a window. She, is freaked out because she's like, what is it? But she sees it.
There.
Yeah, right? Like a gigantic cat. And then they just let it on through.
Not even just a cat, though. Like a
mountain lion.
Like a mountain lion, a panther, lion.
Cougar.
Any kind of lion. Yes.
I don't think it has a mane.
No. But, yeah.
A cougar.
It'd be funny if it was just, a bigger than normal cat. Like Neville. He's a bigger than normal cat. Just
No, that's... Sorry. You're right. That did need clarification. Not a big cat like a house cat. Like a big cat like a wild one.
Yeah. No, I think that was obvious, but I just... all I could think about was my cat, who is very fluffy.
Well, as opposed to one of my cats, who's just fat.
No. Sion.
Anyway, so obviously she freaks out seeing this, gigantic mountain lion, just walk through the wards like nothing. And it comes into the keep, shifts, and talks to Rowan. So, They know each other. His name is Gabriel, and he needs to ask Rowan a favor. So they go back to his room, and, like, Rowan just, like, completely ignores Celaena. She doesn't exist.
Great.
Yeah. So later, Celaena is, like, a little bit nosy and is like, oh, that Gabriel guy came at, like, after supper. He's been traveling. Maybe he's hungry. So she actually goes and gets food and brings it to the room and knocks, like, comes in. And she sees Gabriel lying on Rowan's workbench in his room, and he has no top on. Woo!
And she does think,
like, if something is...
maybe I shouldn't interrupt them.
Yeah.
Maybe something is happening.
Yeah. But she sees that Rowan is actually giving him a tattoo. Rowan sort of just tells her to leave the stew and get out. And it just, like, she's a bit hurt that he doesn't want to share any personal information with her.
Yeah, it feels like she has bonded with him through their moments that they've had. Because any moment that they've had so far has solely been from her, like, sharing or learning or, like, getting something. So she feels a bond for him that she doesn't feel with anyone else, which is, like, makes sense. She only sees 3 people that talk to her within a day.
Yeah.
So she's kind of, like, latched onto him in a way, even though it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, this is...
like, looking at it, like, far away, you can see it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But, like, if you were in a situation and the only person that you, like, actually talk with, joke with, whatever, like, I can see you feeling like, why didn't you introduce me to your little friend?
Yeah.
Like, you know? In a human world, I'd be like, but do you think your friend hates me? Like, what's happening? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know. It just, I find it weird. I found that this came sort of out of left field. Because they literally went from, I hate you, like, you know, they had a couple of moments, yeah, but, like, he hasn't been friendly to her at all. No. So it is just sort of like, whoa.
I think it is just so she can say, like, a certain phrase that we can have a conversation about later.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. Anyway, so she's still, like, so she leaves, but, like, she's still outside in the hallway when he comes out, and he's really pissed off at her for interrupting him. And so she asks if he tattoos for money, and he tells her it's none of her business. But then he's like, but no, I wouldn't stoop that low to, like, offer to take money for that. So, like, it's not her business, but he still tells her anyway.
Yeah, but it's also, like, he's not saying that tattooing is a bad profession or anything.
No.
It's just that he does tattoos for a specific reason. Also, he is fey and rich.
Yeah. So
he doesn't need the money.
Yes.
But yeah, it's, like, such a shitty sentence to put in there, and I'm like, I don't think that's necessary. Like, people tattoo when we love them.
Yes.
We get Sarah J. Maas tattoos, and we're so happy that they'll allow us to be tattooed and talk about our love of books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it sort of escalates quite quickly. So, like, I guess she just literally has the conversation, like, do you tattoo for money? And he's like, no, I would never stoop so low. Like, but then she says he has this, like, look on his face that sort of made, like, that, it's one of those things that you and I are like, how can you read a person's look without, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So apparently she reads his look to be like, yeah, your profession is garbage too. Like, you're an assassin. That's lowest of the low.
Yeah.
And she essentially tells him that that he's better off slapping her instead of reminding her over and over and over how cowardly and awful and worthless she is.
Which is more like saying how she feels in herself. Like, this is how she actually feels about herself. It's sad, really.
Yeah.
Because that's how she feels. She feels worthless. And, ugh. Sucks. Sucks a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, so, like, it's just... Anyway, so she just says, like, I can do the job well enough on my own. I don't need you also, like, reminding me how terrible I am. So, like, just hit me because I'm tired of trading insults. And, like, and she also says, like, if he had just said something, like, just told her that he wasn't available, she wouldn't have come. But then she was like, you literally just left. Like, we were downstairs, like, seemingly together-ish, like, side by side. And he doesn't even look in her direction. He didn't even, like, glance. He didn't say anything. So, like, she was just trying to be kind, which is a huge olive branch for her.
Yeah.
Now, she was also trying to be nosy, too, but, like...
Yeah. You kind of have to wonder if this has something to do with what eventually happens. Like, it kind of twofold in that she was like, oh, are they together? But also wanting to be around him, and he was there, and she's like, why did he leave? Is he okay? Like, she also didn't know if this cat man was gonna
fuck him up.
Yeah. He easily could have.
Yeah.
And, like, there's some instincts there.
Yes, that's true. Anyway, so she just said, like, if you had said something, I wouldn't have come up, and I'm really sorry I interrupted you, but you just left me downstairs. And this, like, makes her come to a realization that, like, she just says again, like, you left me. And, like, is it a big deal that he left her downstairs when he went upstairs in the grand scheme of things? No. But she's been through so much emotional trauma that it's manifesting in this way. And she's, like, terrified at this moment. Like, she says there's, like, a blind terror opening up around her. So she, like, says to him, I have no one left. No one.
Yeah.
And, like, she says, like, she needs him to sort of reassert that she doesn't have no one.
Yeah.
And she says she doesn't realize how much she means that she has no one left, but how much she needs it to not be true. She didn't realize how much it was affecting her. However...
I guess, but there's also, like, the other side of this coin is her entire life after Magic left and after her parents died. She had a teacher who, like, was abusive, but, like, loved her.
Yeah.
In a way. So, like, that was all she had. And then she went to, obviously, a slaving camp. And then she became a champion. But then, like, the crown prince fell in love with her. And her guard fell in love with her. Like, she's always had someone of power, kind of, to, like, go to and to love her. And, like, I can see her being like, oh, this is how this relationship's going. And I don't mean love romantically. I just mean, like, to care about her as a fucking person. Yeah. So, like, I can't fault her for feeling like he should give her that.
Yeah. Would have been nice.
Yeah. Would have been nice.
However,
I guess not the time.
No.
Not the right time.
No, because he is an asshole here. And he tells her that There is nothing that he can give her, nothing he wants to give her, that she is not owed an explanation for what he does outside of training her, and that he doesn't care what she has been through or what she plans to do with her life, but the sooner that she can sort out her whining and self-pity, the sooner he can be rid of her. And he then says, "You are nothing to me, and I do not care." So really, he could not get any more dickish. Like, that is probably the worst thing he could have said to her.
100%.
Maybe if he brought up Nehemia's death, it might have been slightly worse, but like...
Yeah, even though he doesn't know her name. No. But if he brought it up, and he was like, "And Nehemia died because of you," and she'd be like, "I didn't even tell you about that." Fuck, it's bad.
Yeah, so like, obviously, she says that there's like a ringing in her ear, and it turns into this roar, and she feels this, like, it's actually really amazing, like, how it's, I'm just gonna read it. It says, "Beneath it, a sudden wave of numbness, a too familiar lack of sight or sound or feeling." So she's used to feeling this way, and that's the heartbreaking part, is that, like, she knows exactly how it feels to have no one and to be nothing, and she's used to it, and it's, like, coming around again. And she says she doesn't know why it happened, because she had been so dead set on hating him, but it would have been nice to have one person who knew the absolute truth about her and didn't hate her for it. And then she says, like, she walked away without another word to him, and with each step she took back to her room, the light that had been flickering there, the light inside of her, went out. And you just want to, like, sob for her. You just want to, like, wrap her arms in a little hug, because she's so alone.
For sure, yeah.
No one loves her. And it just makes me... I do too.
I love her so much.
It just makes me sad.
Yeah, so Celaena wakes up, and she's still dressed in the clothes that she was wearing last night. And she is depressed as fuck. Like, she is not doing well. She's completely disassociating with everything. And she goes to the kitchens, and she doesn't really want to talk to anybody. But then Emrys shows her an eelway knife that Malachi gave him. And her, like, disassociating kind of snaps, because obviously eelway makes her think of Nehemia, and she says, like, or she thinks there's, like, a screaming in her head, and she just says, "I do not care." And then, because there's this screaming in her head, she says it to him louder again, which it's obviously not great to, like, snap at people when you're having a bad time, but she's, like, very clearly, like, the worst that she's been. Like, this is not good.
Yeah. But can I say, too, that, like, and I understand, obviously, it's to do with what she has been through. But, like, she's also, like, overreacting, not to what he said, because I don't think that was cool at all. But, like, we have to think about, like, what actually happened. He literally went upstairs with someone he knew and just didn't say anything to her about it. You know what I mean? Like, she is, I think, overreacting to the like, when they were having that conversation, and she was like, "You left me. Like, you left me."
Yes.
Like, he just went upstairs to his room. Like, I think she overreacted to that, but, like, for him to say what he said to her after the fact, it's heck awful.
Yeah, I agree. Like, she even thinks to herself, I think, during that scene, she's like, she goes because she's also curious. Like, it's not just that she's like, "He left me." She's also like, "I wonder what they're doing." Like, so, I don't know. I don't think that was the right move, her going up there. He clearly also overreacted and said some very shitty things, which I think I understand more, like, why she's reacting to that.
Yes.
But I think it does, because, like, she even says, like, at night they just sit and listen to the stories, and he just, like, they don't talk to each other. He usually just stays there in his hawk form. So, like, it's not like they spend their nights getting to know each other or anything. So it's not even really like he did leave her. Like, if he left during training, that would be different. Like, if the cat showed up while they were, like, training out by the temples and he just left her there.
Yeah.
Sure. This would be a good reaction. Because he would have left her there. It just, I don't think that she had a right to go to his room and be like, they could even be fucking, and then just show up. Like, it's, I think it could have been maybe timed in a different place to make it. But anyway, it doesn't change the fact that, like, the shit he said was super bad. And, like, you can kind of see, like, the relationship developing in the last few weeks and stuff, and they've shared a few things with each other, and you're like, oh, maybe, like, they'll have something going forward that they'll actually heal together type thing. But clearly that is not the case. So I get that she needed this moment, but I don't think that she should have gone to his room.
No.
Like, I think even the first time I read it, I was like, why are you doing this?
Yeah. They're not, like, they literally had, like, maybe one moment, maybe 2 moments of connection. Like, it's not enough.
And now she's snapping at people who actually enjoy her company. So it's like, it's really shitty that, she clearly, and this, I guess, is a sign, but she clearly, like, holds his opinion, and she wants him to like her, which, like, if you think about it in the long run, does make sense. And I can actually understand the entire situation last week a bit better, because what if they were fucking? So I guess I'll just take everything I said back, and it all makes sense. What a stupid book. Sorry for that conversation, guys. It didn't make sense knowing the future. Anyway, I guess. So yeah, she just yelled at them all that she just doesn't care. And Luca's just like, Alentia, don't be rude. And it's kind of another punch in the gut for Celaena, because, like, that name came from Nehemia. Anyway, and that means spirit that cannot be broken. And she just thinks, like, it's all a lie. Like, her spirit is currently broken. Nehemia lied to her completely, and now she's dead. Like, she's really not doing fine, and she's not processing Nehemia's death at all. So Celaena snaps at them and tells them that she doesn't care about them and to leave her alone. And then she, like, stares down Emrys so hard that I guess it's, like, instinctual. And Malachi and Luca kind of, like, stand in between them. And, like, bare their teeth at her. So she's being very aggressive. Which is intense for this early in the morning. But it kind of makes her realize, like, those three are a family. Like, they have a bond. They love each other. Like, so she is also a bit, it's kind of like another slap in the face. Like, she clearly, her family is dead. Then she found Nehemia, and Nehemia now has lied to her and orchestrated her death. And now she's over here on a different continent, and one person that she thought she was bonding with turned out to be a complete dick to her and told her that she may as well be dead. Bad times. So Celaena, like, just lets out a dead laugh, and Emrys goes to say something, and he's got, like, tears in his eyes, but she just, like, lets out another dead laugh and just walks away. So she doesn't do her kitchen duties either. Then we get Rowan's point of view, and I actually think it's the first time we get his point of view in this book.
I think so.
So he says that he spent the whole, or thinks, I guess, he spent the whole night tattooing Gavriel's fallen warriors' names into his skin. So, Gavriel, did we hear his name already?
I don't think so.
I don't think we got it in your part. So the other guy's name is Gavriel, but he basically came to see Rowan to get him to tattoo the names of people that died under his watch, basically, onto his body. And he told Rowan the stories while Rowan was tattooing their names. He's currently walking down to the kitchens, and obviously if he was tattooing all night, he didn't sleep, so you'd think he's probably in a shitty mood too. But he's on his way to get Celaena, but he doesn't see her there. And for a second, he almost hopes that she's gone, so he doesn't have to deal with what he said last night.
Which is like, ugh.
It's like, this man is a bajillion years old, and he still can't, like, say he's sorry for saying a shitty thing in the heat of a moment. It's not great. Emrys is obviously there, and Emrys stops him and asks what he's doing to that girl, and says that she has so much emptiness in her eyes, and Rowan just says it's none of his concern, but Emrys asks what he sees when he sees her. But Rowan kind of thinks about it, and he's like, he doesn't know. So he again says it's none of Emrys's concern. But Emrys says that she's losing hope and needs someone to help her back up. He also says that he knew Evelyn Ashriver, which is Aelin's mother. She actually worked in the same kitchen for almost a year, 25 years ago. And anybody that, who's been around and in Mistward, I guess, for 25 years, knows that Alentia is actually Aelin. Like, they can, I guess, recognize her. But he just says, like, she has no hope left anymore. That's obviously not good. But then Emrys tells him he should care because she could offer a better world for them all. Which is interesting.
This part makes me almost want to cry because, like, even though she was so terrible to him, like, he knows that he doesn't take it. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't.
It's not. He doesn't take it super personally. He does take it. Obviously, he is sad, but he knows that it's not.
He sees how broken she is and knows that she needs someone to help her. Like, look, I'm breaking. I'm like tearing up a little bit now just because, like, I feel like for anybody else to go to Rowan and, like, get mad at him or anything, he would just get defensive. But for Emrys to say, like, look at her. She has nothing left. She has no hope. Like, she needs somebody to build her back up. Just for him to say that in the way that he says it, it just, like, ugh. I don't, like, it gets to
I know.
me.
Yeah, me too. It's like it's one of my favorite scenes, I think, in this book. And I obviously Rowan needed it. Yeah. Because I don't think he was going to realize on his own. He's, like, so stuck in his own, we'll find out later this week, grief and head that he needed this conversation. And for anybody to even talk to Rowan is, like, scary. So I do appreciate that Emrys is just like, what the fuck? Like, he's like almost a fatherly figure. Yeah. It's nice. So we go back to Celaena's point of view, and she just walks for a very long time. And she ends up at a lake and just like collapses into herself and holds her knees. And she thinks to herself, she knows there's no way to fix her. And she sobs, basically. Like, she kind of lets it out, which I think she needs. But she hears her mother's voice say, "Fireheart, why do you cry?" And she answers back, "Because I am lost and I do not know the way." And she just thinks, like, she doesn't know how to find her way back. It's just interesting, because, like, is it just her brain being like, she needs somebody, so that's why she hears her mother? Or is it, like, an outwardly force? Like, what, is it a ghost? Like, are we getting force ghosts here? Like, what is happening?
Honestly, I don't know. I would like to think it's not in her head.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I don't know, I just don't want her to be alone. And, like, for her to have to come up with the figment of her mother just to comfort her
is even more heartbreaking.
It's even more, it's even sadder. So, like, I hope it actually is her mother.
And, like, we have had a spirit before. Yeah. So, like, it very, very well could be. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we ever really find out.
No.
Rowan shows up then, and he asks... he asks if she wants to talk about it, and she says no, and he just says, "Good."
I literally hate this so much. Like,
what happens next?
Hate it.
Or,
just, like, he can see how, like, incredibly heartbroken she is, and instead of even saying, like, "I'm sorry," like, it's 2 words, or saying, like, literally anything else. Like, he can see what his response has done to her.
Yeah.
And the only thing he says is, "Do you want to talk about it?"
Yeah.
Like, I don't think she gets to make that choice. I think he should, like, it is his responsibility to try and make her feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And, like, it's like he's completely unaffected by how incredibly broken she is.
Yeah.
And I'm so mad that she doesn't want to talk about it, fine, but for him to say, "Okay, good," and then just carry on with training as if he is not watching her fall apart because of what he said to her is ridiculous.
So, I know he doesn't know everything, but the fact that he has figured out enough that, like, she's told him, I think, that, like, Nehemiah's dead. He doesn't know everything about it. But, like, the fact that he knows that, and he knows that she is incredibly broken in this moment, he was just told off about it, and he now does what he does next and puts someone's life in danger, you're like... That was the exact wrong time to do this.
Yeah. Well, like, I think as an exercise, and you're going to go through it in a second, it works, right? Like,
yes.
It completely is a valid exercise for them to do. But yeah, I think it is completely the wrong time.
Yeah. But it's also like, if she didn't care about anybody, then there'd be no stakes. So it's just... kind of manipulative based on her actually having emotions and feelings, which he clearly doesn't seem to have. But yeah, so he says good after she says that, and I agree with you. Like, he at least should have said, "I didn't mean to say that you would be better off dead." Like, there should at least, even if he doesn't want to say the word sorry, he should at least be like, "I was..."
Yeah,
like, you shouldn't have interrupted me last night. It was bad timing. Like, even that.
Yeah.
Like...
Or, like, he had me tattooing some really heavy stuff, so I was in my head a bit. Like, even if he doesn't say the words, he should offer up some form of something just because he is witnessing how awful she feels.
Yeah.
And knows it's from him.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah, it's bad. But he says that they're going, and she asks where, but he says he thinks he's started to figure her out now. You're like, if you figured her out and you think that this is a good idea, then you're sadistic.
Yeah.
In this moment.
But like, yes, I think obviously she's not in the right, like, emotional headspace to do this training right now. Yeah. But, like, I'm not gonna deny that this, like, for her training, this is exactly what she needs for training.
Yeah. Just not
right this second.
Right after crying her eyes out and losing her shit at them. So, like, if this happens and Luca dies, the last thing she said to him was, I don't care about you.
Yeah. But now Rowan doesn't know that she lost it on them.
No, but still, it's bad timing. Anyway. Yeah. So they end up leaving and they walk to a cave, and there's a giant frozen lake inside, and Luca is chained and sitting on a blanket in the middle of it. And Rowan tells her to go get him. And she realizes that there's like a current, so Rowan froze the lake himself. So she's like, holy shit, he's powerful.
Yeah.
But you're also like, what if she wanted to talk about it? Were we just going to leave Luca on this frozen lake while they talked about it?
That's true. That's true. He was gambling there that she would want to talk. Like, what if he said, want to talk about it? And she said, yes, I do. And then laid out her entire life story. Mm-hmm. It would take hours.
Yeah. Be hilarious. Rowan probably wouldn't even care. He'd be like, he'll be fine.
Yeah. Sin.
He's such a sin. But yeah, so Rowan tells her that she's afraid of her power, but her power is just trying to protect her. And it doesn't realize that the thing that she fears and the thing that she's like fighting against kind of is her power. So she needs to focus on something else and not her power to actually be able to control her power. Because if she starts getting into her head about her power and focusing on that, she'll just explode and everything will burn down. Yeah. So that's why he put Luca in this situation, because obviously she's going to want to save him. So she asks him what happens to Luca if she fails, and he says he'll be cold, wet, and possibly die. Like, good. Great.
Amazing.
So the chains he has on, like, I guess his hands are chained, will sink to the bottom if she loses control. Because, like, obviously if she loses control, everything will melt. So he's going down. And Rowan also doesn't give her a key for them, just tells her she needs to figure it out with her magic. And he kind of, like, I'm going to say fucks with her a bit, because, like, the ice groans because he's, like, letting a bit of it thaw, kind of. And he's like, hurry up. And he tells her to stop complaining.
Because there's, like you said, there's a current. So he's constantly having to, like, refreeze it so that it doesn't break apart.
Yeah. So he's just like, stop complaining and get going. And you're like, she's not wrong to be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
She does end up shifting, and she tells Rowan there's a special place in hell for him. And he just says, tell me something I don't already know. And you're like, woof. There's something wrong in his head too.
Mm-hmm.
So she shifted and she starts getting out on the lake, and the water is frozen, but the ice is super clear, so she can see to the bottom. And she can kind of see, like, the bottom is covered in treasures and weapons, and, like, they're all around the whole place by the walls and stuff. Luca is literally in the middle of the lake, just, like, chattering at her and talking. And she's just like, you need to shut up because I'm trying to save you. And he's distracting. But she gets out further where she can't actually see the bottom anymore. So it's super deep here. And she kind of starts to panic, and her magic starts to respond like Rowan said it was. And it warms her up from the inside out. But she's kind of close to Luca now, and he calls out to her. And she's just like, you need to stop. Because she's kind of thinking about her magic, thinking about what Rowan said, and she's like, in Otterlin, magic is a death sentence. Like, if anybody knew about it, she would be killed. She also hasn't had it, really, since she was 8, and she didn't have control over it then. So, like, she is trying to let herself know that it's, like, okay to have magic here. It doesn't mean she's gonna die here. Like, she's allowed to use her powers here. We get another flashback now, and it's kind of like you said, your flashback was, I think, after what we kind of get now. But she says that her powers are the reason that she was banned from the Library of Orinth. She was 8, and she incinerated a bookcase of ancient manuscripts because she got irritated during a lesson, and it was a horrible relief for her when magic actually disappeared on her own continent. So, just a bit of backstory, but yeah, it seems like these flashbacks are going in like backwards order. It's kind of weird because like we just got like, why is she? Yeah. Anyway, doesn't really matter, but she thinks again too that like Celaena, Sardothian, never had to worry about burning a book or a playmate or anything like Aelin did when she was young. She also remembers like overhearing Melisande, which is another country that is currently under the king's rule, because I had to look it up because I was like, do we ever hear about this place again? But they come up briefly in another book in the future. But Melisande's emissary asked about like if she would burn a city to the ground or if she could be a threat to her. Which is just kind of foreshadowing. But it's also like something you obviously don't want to hear when you're a child, that like you have that much power and not have any control over it. Back to the present, her magic is kind of threatening to come out because I guess like she probably shouldn't have thought of those things. But Rowan tells her she's in control now, and she thinks that, like, even as Celaena, she's never been in control. Like, she's always had masters. So, Arabin, obviously, and then, obviously, in Endovier, she wasn't in control. So, and now, as the king's champion, like, he was controlling her. So, like, she's kind of working through things, but kind of like you already said, like it's all happening pretty fast, but she's like getting control over her magic and her life in this moment.
It's like, wait, what? I'm my own master?
Yeah. Yeah, like Rowan tells her like she's the keeper of her own fate, and she's
like, yes, I am. And move on.
Yeah.
Now I'm healed.
I am healed. And like obviously she's not, but still. She does know, obviously, that she does need to master her power. Like, she can't just hurt people with it. And Rowan is looking at, like, all the blades and jewels in the cave. I guess she looks back at him. And he reaches into a crevice and, like, gets a hidden sword out of the wall. And you're like, what is he doing? And why is she paying attention to him doing it? Yeah. She gets to Luca, and this is obviously the first time that he's ever seen her shifted, and he tells her like she has nothing to hide, and that someone else in the keep, Sten, his other form is actually a pig, and he won't even shift now because of the shame. It's just so like pigs are so cute. Why would you be mad?
Yeah,
about
but
being a
you're
pig?
telling me that if this, like, Fey warrior came up to you and was like, hey, want to see me shift, and then shifted into a pig, you wouldn't be like, you wouldn't giggle a little bit.
It depends, though, because, like, wild pigs are terrifying.
That's true. I'll
So,
give
like,
you that.
Yeah, but then, like, if he's a little potbelly pig, he'd be so cute.
But, like, you wouldn't be attracted to that.
I would want a little cuddle.
Yeah, but, like, you wouldn't be like, ooh, sexy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, because all of the other animals that I see are like, ooh, sexy. Sexy animal. What a sexy hawk.
But you know what I'm saying. Like, Rowan turns into a hawk. That's hot. Gabriel turns into a lion. That's hot. Maeve also has a couple of, like, wolves on hand. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Even like an owl. Anything that can fly is, like, pretty cool. But yeah. Yeah, it would be kind of funny. So it actually almost makes Celaena laugh, but then she kind of remembers the chain, and she's like, she's trying to decide what she should do, if she should try to melt the chains and then risk burning Luca, or if she should melt the ice around them and, like, pull up the chain, I guess, so that they can just get out. She decides to melt the ice because she doesn't want to burn him, which makes sense. So she pulls, like, just one thread of power forward, and she masters it to make a small hole to get the chain free. And she does it, and she's, like, super proud of herself. But then there's, like, a red eye under the water just looking up at her. And she's like, oh, shit. It's a huge and ancient creature with large, sharp teeth, and it's just, like, she thinks swimming towards them curiously. She immediately just tells Luca to get off the ice, and she looks over at Rowan and thinks that he's just, like, he's shocked because he thought that this was empty too. And you're like, why would he think that? Because I think we come back here in a future book. Yeah. And, like, this isn't just a lake. No. Why would he... And it has a current. Why would he think it's empty? Maybe he didn't think that this giant creature was in there. Yeah. Fine. But you should never think it's empty.
Well, and I guess seeing all the, like, treasure and stuff, like, how else would it have gotten there?
Yeah. Although I think Celaena does say that there are no bodies or anything there. Like, there's no
But that
skeletons.
Almost makes it more obvious.
Yeah, right? It's interesting.
Like, there's a ton of human treasure, but no human remains. Like, to me, that screams monster.
Yeah. Unless they were, like... Yeah, even if you were, like, sacrificing shit to somebody, it's to somebody or something. Anyway, Rowan ends up hardening a path to the shore of ice so that they can get back, and she pushes Luca ahead, and when she looks down right below her, she notices that this creature is missing an eye. So that's just interesting. She starts forward, but it snaps up its tail, and, like, I guess all of the ice kind of, like, bounces, and, like, I just imagine, like, a wave. So she ends up sprawled on the ice, and her magic wants to protect her, but it is super unhelpful right now because she would just fall in the water.
Yeah. Yes, it would.
So she yells out to Rowan for a weapon, and he does slide her the sword that he found. And the sword has, like, she calls it a ruby, and it's the size of a chicken egg in the hilt. And the blade is still sharp, and then a golden ring falls from the scabbard, and she pockets the ring, and then she just starts running faster to get away from there. Yeah. She ends up catching up to Luca, who fell, and she grabs him, and they run. They get to the shore, and she looks back and sees the creature get onto the ice. So, like, the creature can be on land. So that's not good. Rowan does melt the ice then so that it sinks again. But Celaena just runs with Luca out of the caves and into the woods. But then she hears the creatures roar, and she kind of thinks, like, she kind of knows, I guess, that it can't leave the cave.
Yeah.
But
like
she's
a
still...
roar of frustration that they got away.
Yeah. She still, like, runs as fast as she can back to the fortress with Luca, and she sends him back inside and tells him not to tell anyone what happened. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Rowan catches up to her, and she just launches herself at him, saying that she'll kill him if, I guess right now, she's going to kill him. She just... Obviously he's faster, but she gets a punch into his face, and she does actually manage to pin him, and she, like, starts pummeling him, basically.
Love it.
And, yeah. And she tells him if he ever endangers anyone again, she'll kill him. And he does end up getting out, and he pins her, and he says he'll do what he likes, but he asks her why. And he also calls her Aelin during all of that, which is just interesting. And it's also like this book. I'm always...
Well, like, it's so hard to talk about because, like, we know what her real name is. We know it's Aelin. But, like, she still thinks of herself as Celaena and still prefers Celaena. And then Chaol and Dorian still think of her as Celaena. So, like, it's like, what do we call her when we talk about her?
And then, like, in the kitchen, she's Alentia. Mm-hmm. And sometimes Chaol and Aedion call her Aelin. So it's like...
Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, it is hard to, like, figure out, well, what should we call her? But it does clear up.
Yes,
like, this is really the most confusing book of the series in terms of, like, what to call her. It clears up in the future.
It does. And I kind of think that Rowan doesn't say her name much, but when he does, he calls her Aelin, and he's only ever called her Aelin. Yeah. But he just doesn't call her by name often.
No.
But when he does, it kind of hits her. And so anyway, he asked why, and she says that she's sick of it, and she actually tells him about Nehemia orchestrating her own death, and she says it's because she wouldn't help her, and she thought that her death would spur Aelin basically into action. Yeah. She basically just pleads with Rowan then to not bring others into it. And she says it's like her line. She'll do anything so that, like, that doesn't have to happen. That's, like, the one thing that she can't deal with. He asks how Nehemia died, and she tells him that Nehemia manipulated someone who was Archer to hire someone else who was Grave to kill her, and he asks what happened to them, and she says she killed them, and she kind of feels a bit ashamed because she thinks back to, like, how Chaol reacted when he saw her kill Archer, and also when she walked in with Grave's head, and Rowan just answers good, and she's kind of surprised at that, but she looks at him then because she's like, that's not the answer I was expecting. And she notices that not only is, like, his face bloody and bruised, but she's burnt handprints through his shirt onto his arms, and she's ruined his tattoo.
You're so angry about that. Like, it's not about the bruises or the fact that he's, like, got second-degree burns, but she ruined his tattoo. Yeah, that is a hard line.
Yeah. That's crazy. But yeah, she does apologize because she does actually feel super bad. But he tells her not to apologize for defending people she cares about, which is actually, like, super... It's not an apology on his part, but it's kind of like him apologizing because he never will. She tells him then that she's keeping her sword, but he says, like, she can't bring it to practice. And she's like, fine, a compromise. I can do that. Yeah. She then mentions to him that this is twice now he screwed up her training and that he's the worst instructor she's ever had. And he says, which I love. But he says he's surprised it took her this long to say something, which I also love. I'm like,
yeah.
It's cute. I like it.
He should admit it. He is terrible so far.
He's not doing great.
No.
So they go to the kitchens, and they're, like, bleeding and dirty, and Emrys gives them food, and he tells Celaena that she's off kitchen duty tonight and tomorrow, and Luca is kind of, like, just gesturing wildly to her in the background, and then finally he points at his ears, and she realizes that she's still in her Fae form, so she shifts back. But Emrys says he doesn't care what form she's in, but he's glad that she actually got a few punches in this time. Which is kind of cute. He does end up berating them for brawling and yelling every day, and Celaena almost smiles because Rowan's reaction is like kind of like a bit meek, which is just, he kind of feels a bit bad. And then I kind of forgot that this happened, and it's reminiscent of Silver Flame's moment that we also don't like. Yeah. But yeah, Celaena goes over, or Alentia goes over, and kneels in front of Emrys and apologizes to them all, basically. I guess it's the Fae thing. I guess it's like Fae are animalistic, so it, like, kneeling is kind of a show of you're putting yourself lower or something, but I don't like it. It's not for me. You can apologize standing.
Yeah, I think it's more like it is more like a sign of respect, because he is hella old, and like he does garner a lot of respect, and it's like a respect your elders thing, and she was a bitch to him this morning, so
yeah, but I don't like it.
Okay.
Emrys then tells her that her mother worked here, and that, like, basically they know who she is, so there was no use using a fake name anyway.
I love it.
Yeah.
I like how they let her go on with it anyway.
Yeah, they did for a long time, and now they're like, listen, you were a bitch, also we know who you are.
Yeah.
She and Rowan wash dishes together, even though she's off kitchen duty. But I guess they're washing, like, their own or something. Possibly. But she asks Emrys if he knows any stories about a creature that lives under Bald Mountain, which is the mountain they were at. And Rowan just says he can't know that story. So you're like, does Rowan know that story? Because, like, he shouldn't have been surprised that there was a creature there if he already knew about it.
Yeah.
But Emrys does know that story, because Emrys is a keeper of stories. And he says the creature in the lake apparently claimed to be from another world, and it preyed on anyone and anything until a mighty warrior challenged it. This warrior carved out an eye and cursed the beast to live in the cave until the mountain fell. And they don't know who the warrior was, but he wore a golden ring. So she thinks of the ring in her pocket and the ruby in the sword, and she's like, it can't be a coincidence. Which is fair. That night she ends up studying them both, but we don't really get anything else on it. And she can't sleep because she feels so guilty about burning Rowan's tattoo off. I don't... More so that she hurt him, not that she ruined his tattoo. But, you know, priorities. But she actually brings the tin of salve to Rowan's room, and
She should have learned her friggin' lesson, though. Like...
She did not.
You know, she went to his room last night, and he, like, bit her head off. I wouldn't go back to his room tonight.
I wouldn't either, but it does go better this time, so...
It does, yeah, you're right.
And they need it. But he's looking at a map, and it's marked where, like, the bodies that they found were. And he's just, like, shirtless while he's walking around his room. Because it's bedtime. He didn't, like, of course he is. But also...
He wasn't expecting visitors.
Yeah. But she's just like, whoa.
Woo!
He's got a warrior's body, and he's covered in scars and muscles, and you're like, woo! She does give him the salve, but he says he deserved it, and he tells her she could heal, she could heal herself and him too, because she has that gift. And apparently, she got what they call a drop of water from Maeve's line, and her mother used to tell her that the drop of water was her salvation. And she actually wanted to use it to become a healer or to, help heal people, but was told that she didn't have enough of this magic, and it wasn't useful for a queen to know how to heal, which I don't think is true.
Well, I guess in their minds,
the queen's never gonna,
Yeah, she's
true.
Always gonna have someone there to do it for her.
Yeah, so. I guess that's true. Especially if magic... nobody expected magic to disappear, so you'd always expect there to be a magic healer around. But yeah, I'll buy that. Rowan then dismisses her, but she, feels like he can tell how sad she is by that. So he actually tells her to wait, and he ends up telling her after his mate died, it took him a really long time to come back. And she asks when she died, and he says it was 233 years and 27 days ago.
Not that he's counting.
Exactly. And he gestures to his tattoos, and he says that they tell the story of how it happened, and, of his shame, and he carries that always going forward. She kind of realizes then that, that he tattoos people's grief, and... she asks him if he was to blame for his mate, and he says that he was, and he was young, and he wanted to win valor. And Lyria, who was his mate, sold flowers in the market, but Maeve disapproved, which is interesting.
Yeah. But I guess, she's not gonna...
Yeah. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
I get it, logistically, why it had to be put in, why she had to disapprove, but it's just interesting.
Yeah.
But it cost him Maeve's favor, which is, I guess...
Yes, the whole point.
Yeah. So when a war came, he went to prove himself, even though Lyria begged him not to. But he left her alone in their mountain home. Celaena kind of has a realization here that, last night she said, "You left me," and that is the moment that he snapped at her, and she's like, oh shit, that's probably why, because he left her. Which doesn't mean you can snap at people. But...
no.
She understands, and they're both not great at controlling their emotions, so they've got that in common. Basically, he says, he was at war, and then some of the enemy soldiers started sneaking into Dornell, and he immediately flew back, but he was too late. Lyria, and also his unborn child, had been killed, and their house had been burnt down. With them inside, basically. So he didn't even know that she was pregnant because she didn't tell him, and he was too, power hungry to smell it on her, basically. So that's not great.
He wasn't paying enough attention.
Yeah, exactly. He ended up hunting everybody down that, had swarmed this village, we'll assume, or, swarmed wherever she was. And killed them. And then he says for 10 years, he basically went mad. He left and he did nothing, and he would only eat when his hawk forced him to. And he would have let himself die, but he couldn't. Which I find kind of interesting. And you're like, was it because it was all going towards this moment and a person? Interesting. Anyway.
Yeah.
I guess after the 10 years, basically, Maeve tracked him down, and he ended up binding himself to her, basically just hoping that he would die while serving her. And he, in, I guess, the 223 years and 27 days since then, he has not died, but he, I guess that means, has worked for Maeve for 223 years, which is a lot of years.
Well, however long he was, because we don't know how long he was in HoF form, do we?
He said 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So she asks how he came back from that, and he says he didn't, and he's still not back, and he may never be. But he says maybe they could find a way back together, and she says she'd like that. So they actually shake hands and agree to, like, help each other out. And deep inside her, an ember starts to glow, which is nice. She has a tiny bit of hope again, and that is good.
Yeah.
And they've come to an understanding, I think. Like, they're both grieving, and they're both not okay, but they're both going to try to move forward, and I think they need that.
And not, like, try and destroy each other.
Yeah, because that's what they're basically
emotionally
doing. Yeah, like, they don't have to be enemies here, and I think they've, like, finally realized that, which is ideal. We go over to Aedion's point of view now, and Ren and Murtagh are staying in Aelin's apartment as Ren heals. Ren actually thanks Aedion for helping him, and Aedion asks why he didn't tell him that, like, they were homeless. Ren kind of deflects, and he asks if they figured out how to break the hold on magic. Will they actually, like, bring magic back? And Aedion says, of course, it could make all the difference in the coming fights, but Ren says it didn't help 10 years ago. And Aedion remembers Ren's sisters had magic, but Ren doesn't have very much, if any. They were defenseless against 10,000 soldiers, and they were at a magic school. So I kind of assumed that, like, you brought up a magic school earlier that they were talking about sending Aelin to.
Yeah.
So if they had have sent her to that school, she would have been there and then been murdered, which is just interesting. And I didn't put that together any other way.
But, like, but would she have? Because if she has as much power as they say she does,
yeah,
maybe she could have saved the whole school.
You'd think, though, that they wouldn't have gone to the school until they got rid of magic.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if that's true. I assume it is, because, like, I don't know. But yeah, he says, I don't know. I don't really understand the timeline, but I think if the king knew that she was in the school with all this firepower, he probably wouldn't have sent armies there. Although maybe he just wouldn't have cared. He seems the type. Anyway, so Ren says going back will be hard, and he doesn't know, like, going back to Terrasen, will be hard, and he doesn't know if he can be a lord. Aedion tells him if peace ever is a thing that happens, it's going to be strange for all of them. And in his head, he kind of includes Aelin in that, but he still doesn't want to talk about her to anybody else because it's her story.
Yeah.
But Ren kind of says, like, he also tells Ren, like, he's been actively fighting against Otterlin this whole time. So, like, people will respect that in him, and, like, they'll respect him as a Lord of Terrasen because he didn't back down. Whereas, like, I guess Aedion's kind of thinking of himself, and, like, he has worked for the king this whole time, even though we know he hasn't, but, like, people think he has.
Right.
But Ren says, like, he's done some terrible things, and Aedion's just like, we all have. Ren asks what Aedion's going to do with Chaol. And Aedion says, like, he's useful now, so I'm not going to do anything with him. But he says when he isn't, he'll decide then. And if he can leave him alive, that's how he'll operate. And then Ren asks what their queen will think about how he operates. And I'm like, what? Does he think that Aelin, who he doesn't know, would want Aedion to kill Chaol? I guess, but like, it just struck me as a weird thing to say. Because I was like, obviously we know that Aelin has a personal relationship with Chaol, so she wouldn't want Aedion to kill him. And Aedion realizes that.
Yeah.
Ren clearly doesn't know that. But like, I guess, like, kill all of the enemy's soldiers, but like, I don't know. It's he's making a lot of assumptions, Ren is, based on somebody that he barely knew when he was a child and doesn't know at all now. And it kind of does piss off Aedion. But anyway, they kind of move past it. But Aedion says if Aelin is smart, she'll use him as a weapon. And Ren asks if he'll be like her friend if she wants. And Aedion says he'll deny her nothing. And Ren asks if he would become king. And he says he only wants to see her once. If the gods grant him more, he'll be grateful, but he just wants to see her alive. And he also gets kind of pissed about the king thing, because he's like, she doesn't have a crown right now. Like, I can't become king.
Yeah.
Like, we're in war times. Terrasen is not, like, this is not something we need to worry about.
Do you think he's, like, talking about him being king, like, by usurping because Aelin's not there, or do you think he means by marrying her?
Oh, by marrying her, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was like, would you be her friend? Would you be... Yeah. I think he might have even said her king, but I don't know for sure. I can't remember. But, yeah, I don't think he was asking if he'd usurp her or anything.
Right.
But yeah. We go over to Chaol's point of view now, and Chaol and Aedion have become drinking buddies in the past little while, because they're, like, hiding out in the open, which is...
Right.
Interesting. But they're at a tavern together, and they scoped out this group to drink with, because it's a group of soldiers, and they're there on purpose.
Yeah.
Aedion toasts them, and Chaol kind of realizes, like, this is what makes Aedion a threat. Like... He cares, is what he says. Like, he cares about these people. He knows their names. Like, they care about him because of it. And they'll fight for him because he is a good soldier type thing. But he also knows that, obviously, Aedion hates all of these people because they're fighting for his enemy. So, like, he's very... judgmental, Chaol, I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like, we knew that.
I know.
Like, I want to strangle him.
But this is, like, the first instance we get of he starts to worry what's gonna happen when Aedion and Aelin are reunited, because both of them are lethal, and they're both leaders. And he... is basically worried what they will do to his kingdom, because he's like, this is still his kingdom, Otterlin, and he is working for Dorian after all. Like, that is the only thing he cares about.
But, like, I don't know, this bothers me, because I'm like, and I've said it a million times, he should know, like, especially with how, like, she reacted, like, with Dorian about, like, Endovier and stuff, and, like, she has never once been quiet about her disdain for the place, and how, like, awful it is to be treated there, and those people deserve better, right? So, like, I just feel like he should know that she would never hurt innocent people.
Yeah. But...
Right? Like, that's not who she is, and he doesn't know Aedion as well, but, like, I feel like the fact that Aedion, like, is working for the enemy to try and save innocent lives, like, he does know that. It bothers me that he knows core characteristics about these people, and yet still thinks that they're going to, they're going to be just as evil as the King of Adarlan when push comes to shove. They're just going to kill all these innocent people in his kingdom.
But he's not worried about any of the innocent people. He's only worried about Dorian. He's not worried if they kill everybody else. He's worried that they're going to kill Dorian, which would be reasonable to kill. Like,
it would, yes.
But Chaol should know that she wouldn't, because she knows Dorian. You are correct with that. But he's being an idiot, obviously. But I don't think he cares about any of the innocent people. I don't think that's even crossed his mind.
But he's saying, like, he's worried about what they're going to do to his kingdom.
Yeah.
To me, that's affect the whole kingdom, not just Dorian.
I think it's literally just Dorian. I think that's the only thing.
I also feel like Aedion knows, quote unquote, Hollis, and Celaena, like, sort of knows of Hollis, who is Dorian's younger brother.
I thought it was Holland.
Was it Holland? I thought it was Hollis. Anyway, besides the point. Younger brother. Maybe it's Holland.
H. Oh, no, it's Holland.
Holland.
Oh, yeah. Hollin. I also thought it was Holland. So
like
I was wrong, too.
Like the city.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so, like, and they know that child is terrible, because Dorian has told Celaena, at least, that he is a monster of a child. So, like, I feel like they're gonna be politically smart, and if they're gonna kill any of the king's heirs, Holland should be the one that goes.
Yeah. But I wouldn't put it past their kingdom to just get rid of the whole line. Like, if it wasn't Celaena Aelin in power, I could see somebody from their kingdom being like, we should kill them all for the sins of the father.
That's true.
But he does know her, so it is dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back to this tavern. Aedion calls a contest that the furthest to travel to get here drinks for free. And an older soldier comes forward and says that he's traveled from Knoll. So they invite him to sit with them, and they ask him about him. And his name is Commander Jensen. No, Jensen. Jensen? Not sure.
Oh.
Anyway, doesn't really matter. But he tells them that there's a sacred volcano and there was a temple there, but the king, like, basically sacked it and he just built a giant tower there. And the locals hated them. And it was always dark, and some men would end up going mad. And he tells them, like, they would get headaches and they would end up bashing their heads in before they could be killed. So, like, their heads would be pounding so much that they'd be, like, trying to do anything to get it to stop and would eventually just kill themselves. Chaol, sorry, we're in Chaol's point of view, thinks of Kaltain and Roland because Celaena told him that they used to get headaches. And Celaena also got a headache when she found the dungeons under the clock tower. And they ask about the tower in Knoll, and Jansen guy says there's no door, it's just black stone, and he says there was also one in Amaroth, and they would send messages back and forth. So they, based on this information, realize that there's 3 black towers with no real doors or anything in an equilateral triangle, and they think they must be related to the magic being gone. And
yeah, because they already have the information from Murtagh about the waves that they thought came
from those directions.
Yeah.
And Chaol realizes he needs Dorian's help, even though he didn't want to pull him into this. And you can kind of realize, like, at this moment, what happened to magic. Like, and obviously, obviously Chaol does too, because he's like, oh, I want to test a theory, I'm going to use Dorian, because he has magic. So, like, Chaol realizes, but how does nobody else in the entire continent realize? Especially, like, this guard and every other guard that was there with him knew that there were 2 towers there. he can probably see the courtyard one. Like, it just seems... Also, you'd think that if it's a triangle, wouldn't... Like, it must have, like, a wider span than just the triangle, because otherwise you'd be able to use magic on the other side of the line where the clock tower is. So, not to get too far into what's happening, because we haven't stated outright what is happening, but it's interesting.
But, like, and, like, again, like, he wants to test the theory before he goes, like, wild with it. But, like, if I had this information, I'd be like, how about we just knock down the clock tower in the courtyard just to see what happens? But, like, it
seems like it'd be very hard to do, though.
Get a bomb!
And nobody's gonna know that it's Chaol.
Not if he's sneaky.
Chaol, sneaky.
That's true.
I think it'd be a bit harder. Like, the king would notice if somebody blew up the clock tower. You'd also want, Aelin, Celaena around if you're gonna do that, I think, so that there's actually somebody who has good magic, too. But yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of shit going on. We go over to Manon's point of view now, and the 13 have been training together as a unit for 2 weeks, and they're finally starting to figure out their mounts. They also only eat meat that they hunt now, and they also feed their wyverns that too. So, like, none of them are eating the weird meat or the weird men. It's basically off limits because they taste and smell odd. They end up starting to outpace everyone. So, because I think you already said, or was that this week? You said that, like, they've started practicing in the mornings too.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Manon tells them to hold back, especially when the yellow legs come to watch. Like, when they're actually in the training rings, to, like, hold back, and then when they're out on their own in their morning rides, like, they can work on whatever they need to.
Let loose, yeah.
Abraxos is still a problem, though, because he can't take the crossing. Everyone's basically exhausted, and Manon has had to, like, stop multiple brawls. So she says she wins 2 days off for the 13. I don't know why she says wins, but I think she just asked the matron, and she was like, yeah, you guys are doing good. Go for it.
Yeah.
But basically it's just so that they can, like, sleep, eat, and enjoy the men in a nearby village. Manon can't do that, though, because she has other plans. She's going to the Runes, which is an interesting name for a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And
for those that don't know, if you have not read Crescent City, it is the name of one of the characters.
Who is hot.
The main one. Yeah, it's Catherine's fave.
My fave, for sure. So she puts a saddlebag on Abraxos, and she notes that, like, all of the Blackbeak Coven should start training with saddlebags because they need to be familiar with the weight. And it's just kind of nice to see, like, she's smart and she's so strategy minded, and I just appreciate that.
Yeah.
The overseer tells her, like, this is going to come at a cost and to be smart bargaining. But she says nothing has helped Abraxos' wings, so she needs to go. And you're like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
He also tells her a storm is coming, but this is the only time that she was able to get off, so it's her only chance. And she then thinks she needs to find the legendary Stygian spiders. And they are apparently large as horses and deadly, but she needs to get some spider silk. Which, if you've read Assassin's Blade, you will have heard about them before.
Yeah. And
there's some Easter eggs in here about Assassin's Blade as well. But nothing to really spoil anything. So the storm ends up coming in while she's flying, and it's freezing rain and wind, so they get to the Rune Mountains, but they, like, land on a ledge to wait out the storm. But it's obviously freezing, and they need to spend the night there. So they end up, like, curling up into little balls. Like, Abraxos is just a little tiny ball. But then...
It's so cute.
I love him so much. But she wakes up in the morning and Abraxos has like shielded her with his wing to keep her alive. And you're like, he has a heart.
Even if she doesn't.
Right? But there's like even ice crystals on his wings because obviously freezing rain.
Yeah.
The next morning, the skies are clear and the storm is past, and they circle around until they see bones and normal webs and spiders of every size that are just like in this certain area. Yeah, not a fan. Gross.
I would never.
Yeah.
Ever.
No.
Ever.
No.
Just wouldn't happen.
No. But apparently, so these Stygian spiders are giant, but then any other spider like ends up migrating here basically because they can live under the protection of these giant spiders. So it's like, it's a good deal. They land near caves and there's a giant drop behind them. And Abraxos is kind of like shuffling around, but she tells him to sit and not ruin this. And he puts his tail up as kind of like a barrier between her and the drop because he loves her so much.
Even though she's not being very nice to him.
Right? A feminine voice says she hasn't seen a beast like him in an age or an iron teeth. And Manon calls her sister and tells her the world is changing. And this is interesting. The spider agrees they are sisters in spirit, if not in flesh, and they've come from the same dark master. That is a breadcrumb. The spider then crawls out, and this is when I would be the fuck out of there.
Yep.
She's obviously giant, and Manon says she can see why the blue bloods used to worship them, but the spider says, like, they haven't brought sacrifices in a while, though. And you're like, this isn't the best course of action.
No.
Manon tells her she is there to bargain, and she tells her, like, she needs the silk for her wyvern, and she asks for 10 yards. The spider asks one of the other spiders behind her to, like, bring out a bolt, and she'll think of a price, and she asks where Abraxos came from, and Manon says, like, the king. And then, once they've worked for the king, they're planning to take their wyverns to go reclaim the wastes. And, the spider asks Manon about the curse, but Manon just tells her, like, they'll find a kraken that can reverse it, and then they'll end up back. So, like, there's a curse on the land. We've probably said it before. Like, the land won't grow anything for an iron-tooth witch, so they can't live there. They've basically been cast out through a curse that the Krakens made. The spider tells her a merchant came to see her once, and told her that it's being ruled by a young woman with wine-red hair who calls herself High Queen. And the merchant used to be from the Wastes, and he was a former shapeshifter when magic stopped. That doesn't fit with the story, though, because the young queen wasn't there when this shape-shifting man got the silk.
No.
So she says that this man was clearly lucky that when magic disappeared, he was in a human form. Otherwise, he'd be stuck as an animal for the last 10 years. But this man gave her 20 years and some gifts passed on, but she obviously can't use them because magic is gone. Which is interesting. Maybe that'll come up later books. The bolts end up coming out, and the spider suggests that, like, years won't make much of a difference for Manon because she lives a very long time. But she asks, what about her face, her beauty? And the spider says Manon's beauty could win her a king.
Oh my god.
And
the Easter eggs.
I know, it's wild. And she says, if magic returns, the spider could use Manon's face and her shape-shifting abilities to, like, win herself
Lure
a king. Yeah. So it's like, ooh. Manon doesn't care about her beauty, though. Like, other than to use it as a weapon, she doesn't really care how she looks. So she's kind of thinking about it, we think. She says she'll inspect the silk first. And the spider cuts a swath, and Manon takes it to the ledge to, like, look through it with light. And she tells the spider there's an imperfection. So the spider comes closer to inspect it, too. And basically, the whole point is to get the spider close enough to the ledge. Abraxos shoves the spider off with his tail, and Manon grabs all the silk around her and just, like, jumps on Abraxos' back, and they get the fuck out of there. So she didn't have to give the spider a thing.
Yeah.
I guess she got 10 yards. I don't really know the foot to yard conversion. Did she get 1 yard? I don't know. Anyway, she ends up giving a foot to the overseer to graft onto Abraxos' skin, and she hides the rest in the false bottom of her trunk. And she is just, like, gonna have a bunch extra if she ever needs it, or if Abraxos ever needs it.
So, like, I just looked it up. So 1 foot is a third of a yard.
Okay. So yeah, if she got 10 yards, that's 30 feet.
That's 30 feet.
So that's a lot.
But, like, 1 foot doesn't seem like very much to cover an entire, like, a wyvern's wingspan.
Yeah, but I think it's only to patch in.
Oh, I thought they did a layer over the whole thing.
I'm not sure. Have to reread it. We'll figure that out on our next read.
Yes.
Or we won't, because we don't really know what they do. But yeah, I guess, like, if it's a bolt of fabric, can you, like, pull it out so that it's, like, string? And then, like, if it's a foot, then is it, like, I don't know. I don't know how anything works.
Apparently, whatever. It's enough.
Yeah, so they use it. She didn't tell anyone where she was going, obviously, other than this overseer. And she's not going to tell anyone why his wings are glittering now. Which is cute. I don't know if I've really noticed any fan art with his wings glittering. Like, it's always adorable, but I've never really...
Yeah. Be like, I just lost some of my craft glitter on.
Yeah.
Like, relax.
You know that glitter, can't get rid of it. Once it's somewhere, it's always there. Her mother, so back to this. She kind of says in her head that if her mother or Astrid found out that she went to see the Stygian spiders, like, her grandmother, obviously, not her mother, sorry, her grandmother would kill Astrid, and Astrid would kill her if she found out. So she's not going to tell anyone. Once Abraxos has healed, Manon takes him to the crossing, and Astrid and Sorrel are there in case he can't do it. So their plan is basically Manon will jump off Abraxos, and Abraxos will die, and Sorrel and Astrid will save Manon. Manon obviously doesn't love this plan, but it's better to have a backup than nothing, I guess. Of course, Iskra is there watching this happen. I'd be so pissed if Iskra was there. Like, I get it. And I get that you can't really tell her to go away. But I'd be so annoyed. Abraxos basically just flat out refuses to do it. And Manon looks at him and realizes that he is petrified. Like, absolutely terrified of this. Nothing Manon can do will make him. Someone starts coming towards her with a whip, but Manon knows that he's also terrified of whips and tells them to back off. She obviously is telling Abraxos, also in words, that he has to do this, but Astrid tells her that he can't understand her, and she goes to say that he can, but she kind of stops herself because she hasn't admitted that to anyone yet. that she thinks that, like, especially Abraxos can understand everything she says.
Yeah.
She ends up telling an overseer to put Abraxos where he'll be the most miserable until he's ready to make the crossing, and she just, like, starts to stalk away. And Iskra comes forward and says she can show him how it's done, but it's likely the rider that's the problem. Then she grabs the whip and slashes his face with it, which is wild. Like, she's, like, super close to his eye. Like, what would the punishment for that be? Like, slash her wyvern's eye? Like, they're very eye for an eye, so you'd think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so she ends up looking over at Manon and ends up striking him again. And Abraxos is just there, like, cowering because he hates whips. Manon loses her shit and just tackles Iskra and starts beating the shit out of her, and she's, like, roaring and yelling the whole time. Sorrel hauls her off, and both of their seconds have their swords out, like, at each other, basically. And Iskra is, like, beaten and bloody on the ground. Sorrel just tells her over and over that Abraxos is fine, and she looks back at him and realizes that he is. Like, his blood is already, like, clotting, and it's already healing. But Manon tells Iskra if she touches him again, she'll drink the marrow from her bones.
Love it.
Yeah. That night, Iskra gets another beating from her matron, and she offers Manon 2 lashes to make up for the 2 that Abraxos got, but Manon refuses them, claiming indifference. But in reality, she's just too stiff to do it because her arms are so tired from beating the shit out of, like, ee.
And I obviously I know that she's saying she was too stiff to do it, but, like, she should have.
Yeah.
Like, claiming indifference, like, that a load of bullshit.
Obviously, you're not indifferent. You, like, fucking lunged yourself at her.
Yeah.
And people had to be like, look, he's fine. And she's supposed to not have a heart. Yeah. Anyway. So the next day, Petra comes to Manon saying she heard the fight was something to behold. And Iskra looks worse than she does. Then she says her mount, Keely, wanted to share meat with Abraxos. But Manon says that she is not going to give him rival meat. And she says they aren't rivals. And Keely wanted to, like, give it to Abraxos. And Manon just says, like, the wyverns can't tell you what they want. They don't talk. But Petra says, don't they? So that's interesting. Yeah. But Manon obviously throws the meat out anyway, because she doesn't trust anybody. But it's just like, somebody else thinks that they can talk to them too. That's interesting.
Yeah. Or communicate at least.
Yes, yeah. Obviously it's not talking. But, yeah.
And that's where we stop.
Yeah. I don't have the other thing open.
That's fine. But yeah, so, like, I'm excited that we're through this week. Mm-hmm. Because we're going to start to now see, like, the Celaena sort of, like, her
rise from the bottom.
Yes, her rise from the ashes sort of scenario.
Yeah, she hit rock bottom this week.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. So, I'm super excited for that. I'm also, like, happy that we barely had any Chaol and Aedion and Dorian this week.
Yeah. Same. And, like, I actually, like, I've said it a million times, but I care about Manon.
Yes. Like, and this week was great for Manon.
Yes.
I was really interested.
And next week is also, like, I'm excited for next week, because I'm assuming it's next week. I can't imagine it's the week after. But, yeah.
So, yay! So I guess we're going to wrap things up. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or you could see us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at coffeeandcoread, or on TikTok at coffee.coread. Also, be sure to have a look at the poll we've put up, our Would You Rather this week. which is available for Spotify listeners.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to be reading chapters 39 to 53, so make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.